Hey there, SARMLB fans. It is your host, Bragan Kelly 11, back at it for another great episode. We've got a real treat in store for you today because not only am I joined with my grateful and gracious co host, H. Tennis, but we also have today Boston Red Sox owner, Mets Rock. Mets Rock, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, BK. Thank you for having me on.
It's really great to have you on, Tennis. You know, I guess we'll ask how you're doing as well. You're kind of a regular, so we don't care as much, but
Yeah, who cares how I'm doing? Let's get to the action.
so this is just going to be an AL segment. We're going to go down the list, do what we did last year with our over and unders, and we're just going to go down the line based on last season's standings. So, you guys ready?
Let's
Yes,
do it.
sir.
Awesome. So first up are the feared Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles are coming off their second straight ALCS defeat. What do the Orioles have to do to get over the hump this year?
Have some variance break in the right way. I mean, as we all know, this team is very good. Number one seed past few years, and although the Rangers are impressive, I think it'll be hard to top the Orioles, who have added Ivan Pavasi, in addition to bolstering the bullpen. Excuse me, I mean, bringing back all the guys from the rotation and kind of going light on the bullpen. This team looks to be in contention for another number one seed, and hopefully they get over the hump this year.
Yeah, I agree. This team, again, the lineup is obviously crazy. You have the defense, you have speed. Rotation wise, you have the top four starters. This team's not going to have any problems getting to the playoffs, so that fifth starter is not going to matter. The only thing that could come up is that bullpen. But even so, I think everything else is going to make up for that lack of bullpen. I don't think they're going to see many issues there.
Now, the over under Vegas odds, very official Vegas odds that have come to my desk, have the Orioles at 104.5 wins. You guys have the over or the under?
Well, let me just say that with these very official Vegas odds, I think that whoever set them probably underset them a bit just so we could heap lavish praise on the Orioles because they won 112 games last year, and at 104.5 this year, I can't do anything but take the over. You wouldn't have to know anyone who's setting the lines, would you, BK?
Absolutely not. They do. I feel like that they're just more of an Orioles hater from my side of things. It seems like that they're really just trying to bring expectations down and make people think that maybe this team isn't legit and just kind of sleeping on the Orioles this year. I don't think it's very fair, but I'm also going to take the over on this.
I will as well. I think it's hard to see any team like this going under 105 wins. It's pretty cut and dry on this one.
Now we're going to move on to the Blue Jays, who last year had a 90-72 record, got themselves into the playoffs. With some new ownership last year, they made some moves that made you think maybe they were starting to change things up a little bit. But are the Blue Jays still a legitimate contender in the AL, or has their ship just sailed?
Well, my opinion is that the Blue Jays have fallen a little bit back to the pack of the rest of the AL in terms of upgrades. They have Pujols for a full season. I know he didn't hit well last year, but he did well in spring training and looks to have a fine second season. Uh, However, the rest of the roster seems to have fallen off. They're a little bit weak on defense as usual at short and second. So that may hurt them especially when comparing them with the other heavyweight contenders in the AL, like Minnesota, Texas, and Baltimore. And ultimately, I feel that although this team is pretty solid, going to be competitive for second place in the AL East, it's not a sure thing that they'll be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree again with that. Lineup is still very strong, very average on base heavy, not a whole lot of power. Uh, Defense is weak. Uh, Rotation strong. Bullpen stronger than Baltimore, but still not the best thing you're going to see around the league. I think they'll lock down second place in the AL East, but I don't see them going far at all in the playoffs.
I do think for the moment that they still have at least a roster who should be able to get them to the playoffs. Whether or not they'll actually follow through with it or we'll see if they decide to actually hang on to what they have now. But as it stands now, I do think that they have a playoff caliber team, and the Vegas odds have set their over under win total at 86.5. On that one, I'm going to go ahead and take the over.
Yeah, I actually disagree here, BK. I see them a little bit above average team, so they will finish a little bit above 500, but it's 86.5 is pretty hefty, and I will take the over. I feel like it's more like, excuse me, the under. I feel like it's more likely than not.
I will actually be with BK in this one. I think they're going to go over. You have a division that's not the strongest in the league. Even with the Red Sox bringing their guys up, the Yankees kind of went the opposite way. So you have a lot of interdivision games that are going to, I think, boost that record up a little bit. I think they're going to just get over that hump.
Now, here's potentially last year's biggest disappointment. After receiving quite a bit of preseason hype, last year's Rays let us down entirely, falling to a 72-90 fate. What's different about this year's team?
Well, first of all, I think they finally proceeded through with the youth movement, and everyone who's ever been hyped up on this Tampa Bay squad is up. Devin Bell, Lance Cruz, and especially the pitchers, Woodall, and a few of the relievers like Hannah Caruso, etc. Ownership has kind of been floundering for a while, not making the big moves in free agency, maybe targeting the wrong guys. But if this youth movement works out, all of that is moot because they have some real quality stud players that they've brought up through the minors, and we'll see if it pays off in this weak division.
Yeah, I this team's young and it's got some good future to it, but I don't see anything right now that's causing me too much excitement for this season. Honestly, I mean, the bullpen's got a good number two 1-2 punch. So does the rotation's got a good top three guys, but lineup is a little bit on the weaker side, and I don't really see them causing much damage here in the AL.
Yeah, the Rays have always just been a team who are kind of comparable to the Los Angeles Chargers of the NFL. They, even when it seems like they finally got the pieces together, you still just can't trust them and put your money on them. The over/under is set at 81 for them. I did take the over. I think they'll be in position for that last wild card spot, but I don't see them actually making that push.
Yeah, that's a fair comp, I think. 500 is a good line. And although I took the over as well, it will be close. And I look forward to watching this team to see how they develop. And, maybe if they underperform again this year, they might be looking at some coaching staff changes.
Yeah, I'm taking the under on this team. I don't really, again, that lineup really just doesn't give me any cause for excitement. There's no real crazy defense either to make up for that. I just don't see them breaking that 500 mark. Not this season, at least.
Now, after several years of just kind of throwing whatever they could out there to field a roster, the Yankees are finally going through with a much needed rebuild. Now, the real question is, will Carmen Jackson waive his no trade clause? And if so, where does he wind up?
Yeah, I haven't looked at some of the options for Carmen Jackson. I know that maybe the Dodgers look for another starter. There was a Knicks trade, I believe, that
With
fell through.
Pittsburgh.
Yes, Pittsburgh. As you know, it's a very nice place, but in terms of the baseball quality right now, it might not be as attractive a destination for Jackson as some other places that might be looking to acquire his services. He is getting paid a fair amount, $27 million for 4 more seasons, but I think he is that quality pitcher that can put someone over the hump. That being said, if the Yankees do trade Jackson, it'll definitely make this rotation very weak. And the team isn't there right now. Obviously, they are rebuilding, so we'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, that contract I think is going to play the biggest role in whether or not he gets traded. The Yankees might have to go the Red Sox route and pay some of that just to get rid of him and get something back for him. But it's interesting to me why he wouldn't want to leave such a rebuilding team as a guy in this towards the end of his prime. He could still go out and win a chip somewhere. I do know from my insiders that it wasn't just the Pirates he refused to go to. He's kind of refusing to waive it to anybody. So it'll be curious if that does change throughout the season. But that's really the only thing to watch on this team. I don't know what else this team's going to do that's going to have many media coverage on it other than that Jackson saga.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you won.
I'm thinking with this current impending rebuild that eventually he's going to start to see the losses stack up at a much higher rate than the wins, and eventually he's just going to want out. It's just a matter of when and who.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, I was wondering if management has made a commitment to him, like privately, saying that this will be a kind of a rebuild on the shorter side. So, if he does stick it out for 1-2 years, then they promise that they'll deliver a playoff contending team in maybe 2043 or 2044, and that's toward the end of his contract. If he might stick it out for 2 more years, be a mentor to some of the young guys on the team. If that is the case, then I understand why he's not waving.
I would understand that, but then it wouldn't make sense for them to try and trade him and fail. It would make sense if they never tried to trade him if that was the case. But having that trade be completed and Knicks at the end, that by him himself, that seems a little interesting if management was trying to go that route of a quick rebuild.
That is true. That is true.
It does seem there's a very confusing, interesting dynamic going on in the front office there. Now their over under set at 60.5. I'm going to go ahead and take the under on that, banking on them dealing Carmen Jackson as well as some other pieces to try to build their draft position and acquire some prospects. So I do think they fall short of that 60.5 win total.
I agree. I would take the under as well. They have some promising players like Tornicasa, who is going to start for the first time in his career, and he's very promising. He hit well in spring training, but as we know, spring training doesn't always translate, and we'll see what happens in this developmental year.
Yeah, when at first glance at the over under, the team currently on the field, I think, could go over, but it's hard to believe that this team's going to stay intact all year long. So I am going to join you guys in the under. But if no trades are made, I think this team will break that over.
And now we're going to work our way to the AA affiliate of the Baltimore Orioles, who seems to have worked their way into this segment. The Red Sox. Are they a money laundering front or a baseball team? There's a lot of questionable cash transactions going on.
Why can't they be both?
Should we be concerned? Is the real question. It seems like every time they're in the news, it's bad. It does seem like with the latest service time manipulation threat from the MLB front office that they are kind of looking like they're willing to play ball and put a roster together this year. What's going on with this team?
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is that perhaps the FBI should look into raiding Fenway. There might be some money hidden somewhere in there. That a credible tip. Call it in if you hear anything. Yeah, this team definitely is much improved. It'll be very exciting for sure because on the one hand, if it goes well, it'll be a success for the Red Sox ownership. On the other hand, if it goes poorly, it'll be a fun disaster to watch as well. So I mean, this team you won't be able to keep your eyes off it. I will defer to the actual Red Sox owner for more talk.
Yeah, I think certainly something to take. I mean, this is a good forum to say. Certainly something to take from this, which had been said to the league previously, is there was never any intention to disrespect our players. So we're happy that we can come to a place where hopefully this could be a show of good faith to a lot of our youngsters that we want them on the field, we want them up here, and this team, the pitching side still hasn't fully developed. That was a little rushed, but offensively, I think there's a lot of stuff there. But going forward, the defense is going to be something that we have to focus on. That is like years of progression aren't going to change the current defensive outlook of this team. So
they have their over-under set pretty high at 67.5, considering based on the fact that they did have the worst record in the league last year at 54 and 108. But I do see a lot of promising pieces. They're even trading for some vets to try and get some supposed money goal that no one seems to know what they're talking about. But I'm going to go ahead and take the over. I think they'll be maybe in that 68, 69 win category. Not enough to really do anything, but enough to at least show some signs of progress in this long rebuild.
I think that just ownership talking about the money goal or something, whatever that means, I think that's just further proof that it's a money laundering scheme. Like they're gaining money somehow from doing all these things. I don't know.
To hell with Pizzagate. To hell with Mattress Firm. We're going after the Red Sox now.
What do the gambling laws look like in 2041? What are we dealing with then? Are we allowed to bet on our own team yet? Or um, I mean, I'm going to take the over for the reasons you said, as well as obviously personally having um, knowledge that this team will actually get better throughout the season. It's important to remember this team has 3 of the top 8 picks in the current upcoming draft, and there's a lot of MLB ready talent in that draft. So
So insider
also that.
scoop. Would we see some debuts right away from some drafted players? Inside scoop.
Depending on how that draft falls, the owner of the Red Sox likes to always stay active in trading during the draft, of course. So there's something could occur that could make this team a lot better before day 70.
So what you're saying is you're going to negatively work with the service time manipulation, no matter what.
What do you mean by negatively work?
I was just giving you hell.
And let me just lock in the over as well. I see them breaking 67.5 wins.
Now we're going to work our way over to the AL Central. Last year, Minnesota Twins found themselves in the World Series. Is this a team who can get back this year, or are they just a one-hit wonder?
I think they definitely have the potential. As you know, up the middle production in this league is very important, and they boast probably the best, I would say, middle infield in the league. The Orioles are a little bit weaker at shortstop with Flores. The Cardinals obviously have a great 1-2 punch, but it's hard to match the hitting of Chavez and Demontrevis. Demontrevis, excuse me. I haven't heard that name pronounced in a long time. People are sleeping on the Twins.
He was my MVP pick last year.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, the pitching has a strong top 2, but it's a little bit weaker at the back end. But I do feel like if things break right for them, they can get back to the World Series. It'll be fun between them, Texas, and Baltimore.
My short answer about them coming back to the World Series is no. I don't see it happening. In most part, because of that pitching staff, you have very weak 3 through 5 starters, very weak bullpen outside of Edwards there, who obviously is a stud, but doesn't have a whole lot of help behind him. And yeah, I just don't think this lineup and the defense they have can make up for those pitching shortcomings. Definitely a playoff team, but I don't see them really pushing the Orioles or the Rangers for this World Series appearance.
Now the over-under is set at 96.5. I went ahead. I took the over. I think that they're still going to be riding that World Series high for at least the first part of the season. They still have the same pieces that were there for last year's World Series team. I don't see any reason why they can't be flirting with 100 wins this year. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I took the under. I feel like 96.5 is just such a high bar to clear, especially in this division where there's like not great teams, but no one's a disaster. I feel like they'll play some competitive divisional games and drop some of them, although they are clear favorites to win the division. I feel like when they work through their issues at the start of the season, that's going to prevent them from crossing that 96.5 threshold.
Yeah, and I agree with HT on this one. I don't think they're going to break that over. Again, pitching staff really gives me pause, and all it takes is one freak injury to one of those pitchers and one of those top 3 guys, the 2 starters and their reliever, and you're looking at a team that might not win that division. So at this point in time, I'm not willing to take that over.
Moving down to the White Sox, who posted a 92-win season last year. They broke their 5-year playoff streak, got to the playoffs for the second time in their, what had it been, 17 or 18 years since their last World Series win in 2022. Once bit with one of the worst World Series hangovers in recent memory. Is this franchise actually back on track?
Yeah, I mean, I think for years we've been talking about the talent that the White Sox had and how unlucky they'd been. You saw in the Pythagorean record, they were always underperforming. Last year, 192 games was very impressive for that coaching staff, which really needed a win. Dean Allison was probably on the hot seat if they didn't produce, and he did produce that year. ultimately, this looks like a stars and scrubs roster to me. Obviously, Trevor Shields is a stud. Egan Kelly at second. I can't say enough about him, along with their first baseman and third baseman and their top end of the rotation. But at the bottom of the lineup, you have some guys who are probably like borderline MLB players. Eddie Simpson, Marcos Powell. They'll need to have strong years to show that they deserve to stay in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I agree that that lineup is very, very top heavy. It seems they have a lot of holes in the outfield. It seems that all three of their outfield spots don't really excite anyone. Otis Parr is good, but not great. Um, but I like their bullpen. I like the rotation. I think if this team could stay healthy, stay in the field, Egan Kelly builds off what he did last year, they could push for this division. I don't think that the Twins have it in hand. I think they have a chance to make that push.
Now their over-under is set here at 89.5. I'm going to go ahead and take the under on that, but honestly, it could go either way.
I agree. I'm taking the under, but I would not be surprised at all if they won 90 plus games.
I'm actually going to go with the over on this one. Disagree with you guys. I think that this is a very weak division outside of those Twins, and if the White Sox can catch those Twins on the back end of the rotation on a few of those interdivision games, I think they have a very good chance to break that over.
Now, moving on to the Royals, is this a team who's in position to play for a wild card spot, or does this roster need rebuilding? As you remember, they were able to get to the playoffs a few years ago by building this super team of Rule 5 guys. No one actually knows how this happened or why this happened, but it did. And now it seems that the hype from that team's died down. No one really cares to watch the Royals anymore. And honestly, as someone from Kansas City, I would really like to see a rebuild.
I think rebuild is the way to go, even though this is a weaker division. They are right now strong enough to, like, as I said, take games away from the top two in the division, but that simply isn't going to get it done. You need to go one way or the other pretty much if you want to build a good roster in this league. Blade Bassett is probably one of the most underrated players in the league. No one talks about him. Like, literally no one talks about him. And even 2 years ago, he put up great numbers, was an all-star, and then everyone kind of forgot about him just because he plays for this Royals team. So I do think they need to rebuild, but they have some exciting pieces.
Yeah, I'm going to agree as well with the rebuild. And not to say anything to BK, but it's the curse of Kansas City, to show up there. It's very hard to get famous there. It's not like Manhattan, But as for Blade Bassett, yeah, he's underrated. I agree, but he's still making 30 mil. And actually, something I missed before with the Orioles, I wanted to say was Aristides Lovell. I didn't realize how good of a player he was. And he's on a very cheap contract for that Orioles team for a few years now, and I think that's one of the most underrated players in the league. But let's get back to this Royals team. Again, there's not much cause for excitement. I think they do well to unload Ulrich in the last year of his contract. Curtis Blow as well. Get some youth back for them, and just don't keep pushing for mediocrity. Try to rebuild and make this team another super team.
While I do think this team should go into rebuild mode, I don't think that is their current mindset. I think that they might find themselves early on in a little bit of the wild card picture, try to make some moves to get there, and finish over the projected total of 68 wins this year.
That's a good point. I didn't account for the fact that if they have a hot start, they might push for it, which will push them closer to 500. But just looking at the talent on this roster, I am going to take the under 68.
I'm going to go over with BK just because I don't, as I said, I agree with him. I don't see them breaking it down and trading away these pieces, even if I think they should. And the current roster, I think, can win 70 games. So I'm going to take the over as well.
San Antonio Bandits been making some win now moves recently, like with the trading for Harper Lane, and there's another pitcher they got. I don't have the page up right now, but they've been making some moves that seem like an indicator that they're ready to make a push right now. Do you guys think that they pulled the trigger too early, or is this team ready for October baseball at all?
No, I think this ownership staff is one of the most underrated in the league, and I think they figured that right now was their time to strike, and they did it. After signing Dodo, a couple years to go to anchor their staff. He hasn't worked out exactly how they wanted it, but maybe with signing Harper Lane, putting him in center, that great defense. Lane is probably top three, a top two player in the game right now. He he can anchor that defense and hopefully help the whole pitching staff. And obviously in left, Bob DeBoders is just an amazing name, top three name in the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think the lineup makeup is similar to the White Sox, and it's very top heavy. But the difference is the back end of their lineup has defense that the White Sox don't have, and their rotation has that four headed monster as well. That if they can maybe not this year but next year push to the playoffs with that, they're not going to need to worry about that Sidney Torres the fifth spot. So I
Now they're,
like this team.
now they're over under set at 74 and a half. I'm going to go ahead and take the over on that. I think that they'll be flirting with 500, but not quite get themselves in the playoffs. But I think that they are very, very close to having a contender in the AL.
I think this is one of the most solid locks. This is a very clear over to me. I think people underrate Harper Lane and what he'll do for this team.
I agree. I think this is clearly an over, and I think I'm gonna go so far as to say I think they're gonna fight for that third wild card spot. Having that added is gonna really give them a chance to push for it.
Now, working our way down to the Detroit Tigers. Once again, finding themselves in an awkward position. When will Trish switch to O'Doul's and tear this roster down?
You know what? You never know what happens with Trish. I think it's always entertaining to see what comes out of Detroit. I know that the fans might not exactly be happy, but for the rest of baseball, looking in from the outside in, it's a roller coaster, and we need some of those in baseball.
I do find it a little bit concerning that they don't have the retired player numbers up in the stadium anymore. It's just a bunch of banners that say "Happy Hour every day." I think that they've really lost a sense of culture and of history along the way.
I think that they're getting ready to look to the future, and that's why this team's got some good, solid young players. Trey Gwynn from my Red Sox, I liked a lot. He's in their lineup. You have Victor Guerrero, can be a solid DH for them, really good offensive player. You got some youth that looking to the future. I think they have a shot here. The only problem they're going to have is that rotation is old. But if they can find a way to rebuild that rotation through free agency in the draft, I like this team going forward.
Yeah, I think this rotation is pretty much on their retirement contracts. You look at Aaron Bradshaw, who's like 35 now. Yep, 35. Hal Burns on his
35,
last
yeah.
legs. Patrick Bacon, who he's been there for a couple of years, but he's getting up there too. Mizushima, it's a retirement. It's a retirement home, and that's fine. Like if they produce, that's fine. Bring in some fans, have some nice happy hours, but if not, it's going to be a long road back up to the top.
Now the over under set at 60 and a half. I went ahead and took the under because I just honestly it's a coin flip. I never know what's going to happen with one of these teams, but I'm going to go ahead and solidify my pick at the under.
You never do know what's going to happen with these sorts of teams, but I mean, the one thing that I usually like to count on is veteran leadership, and with those veteran pitchers, I think they will deliver a performance that is a little bit closer to 500 than people think. So I'm going to take the over.
And I agree with HT. I think the pitching staff's good enough, along with this solid lineup, solid defense to get them over that hump and give them 70 wins even.
All right, we're down to the AL West now, starting off with the Texas Rangers. Off to a great start in his young career, is Jade quietly positioning himself on the all-time list?
Yeah, I would say so. Probably a couple more rings, but I mean those may come with time, especially with the solid foundation that this team has built. You're bringing back a lot of the guys, Sweat, Seager, Yoshida from previous years who have delivered so well, especially Yoshida, who was such a good signing for them, and he got a big money deal, and he's performing up to it. The one thing I'll say is Kelsey Morris, who is their new third baseman, he doesn't exactly fit the vibe of what they're going for. I've heard from inside sources that they trade their guys in the minors and when they acquire them to just lean into pitches to wear them, and they get on base a lot that way. But Morris doesn't seem like that type of guy he hasn't racked up those hit by pitch numbers yet. So we'll see if the Rangers are able to instill that vibe in him.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But I like this team a lot. I don't know if their vibe's going to need any change once they get on a roll here at the beginning of the season because they have, in my opinion, the best pitching staff all around in the league. I mean, five top starters that could be the ace on any club. A bullpen with three real top good guys, solid lefty to lead them off, and Trevert. And this lineup is monstrous as well. I think they pose a real threat to the Orioles. I would still say the Orioles are the favorite, but I think this Rangers team is going to give them a run for their money come October.
Their over under is set at 103.5, and I'm with you, Metrock. I'm a very big fan of this team. I think that they are. I say that they're the biggest threat to the Orioles, but at this point, I can we actually call the Orioles the biggest threat in the AL because they've fallen short every single year since they've made this big deal about acquiring all the Red Sox and the Yankees' best players, and they're still falling short. So honestly, at this point, you could argue that the Rangers are the favorite in the AL. I'm going to go ahead and take the over at 103.5.
103.5 is a clear over for me. And I will say that, the folks at Vegas, whether they look at the Orioles' past failures or not, they do seem to like the Orioles better, suspiciously, I will say.
Yeah, I mean, even if we head for a Buffalo Bills in the '90s kind of thing with the Orioles, where they just can't get over that final hump, I still think it's hard to say that they aren't the clear favorites in the AL. Just they have everything going for them, especially that defense that no other team really has. But this team is still very, very good, and I'm taking the over as well. I love that pitching staff.
Moving on down. With no current ownership and an aging lineup, should we be concerned for the future of the Athletics franchise?
Well, this is a case of art imitates life, or in this case, past life. When we don't really know like what the A's are doing, they don't seem to have strong leadership at the helm. But the pieces on the field are very impressive. Briones Freeman, Sipos, I think is how you pronounce it. Kelly is a strong defender at third, and this team is just. I mean, they might tear it down, but I hope they don't because they are a quality team in the AL right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, defense is not crazy, but it's strong. That pitching staff is strong. The lineup itself, like the offense is strong. I think this team's clear a wild card at the very least this year. Whether or not they go far might not be, or they may not go far, but I do still like this team very much. And while I understand tearing it down, I do hope they don't as well.
With the over-under set at 87.5, I went ahead and took the under, and that's solely because of the question in ownership. You never know if the next guy who steps in sees a team that he doesn't like for whatever reason. He sees the age in that lineup and decides that it's time to tear everything down. I think that there's a good possibility of that happening once the new owner comes in. For that reason, I'm taking the under.
I honestly think it worked the other way for me, BK, because without ownership, they aren't going to. Whoever's the interim GM is not going to take drastic moves to switch up the roster, if that makes sense, without like someone at the forefront saying we're going to do this or we're going to do that. I think they just stay the course, and this roster is good enough to me to break that 87.5 win mark. So I'm going to take the over.
I'm going to take the over as well. I don't think that someone's going to come in and tear it down. I mean, who could possibly come into a solid lineup, even if it's aging, and tear down something like that? Can't imagine anyone doing that. But I don't see them tearing it down this year. Maybe come the off season, they want to look to a new direction, but this could be a fun last hurrah for them.
Now, unlike this A's team, the Vancouver Vespers are young and they're hungry. Are they ready to make a playoff splash, though?
I think so. I think they finally kind of. Phil Meredith really needs to take a step forward at the top of this rotation. He hasn't performed well in his 3 years in Vancouver so far. He needs to show that he is the guy that they should be investing in for the long term to lead the rotation. On the other hand, the back of the rotation also looks solid. Ricci, Brenner, Matisse, Ramirez, all very solid guys, as well as Their stars in the lineup: Frederick, Potenza, Rice, Alvarez, etc. I do think they take a step forward, but it'll be tough in that very good division.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this AL West is far and away the most all around division, the best all around division. And this Vespers team, if they can't get over that hump this year, I think they definitely do next year. They're not going to be losing much. They have a lot of youth. I mean, the only real age they have is Chris Ramirez down there, ex Red Sox, and yeah, this very strong pitching staff, which I always love to see. Lineup strong through and through, good defense. I think they're gonna be a very good team this year.
Like I said, I'm not a huge believer in the A's this year because of their ownership reasons. That's a big reason why I am a fan of Vancouver this year. I think that they're going to take over that San Jose spot. I think they're going to make some moves to really solidify their playoff position this year. With the over under set at 85.5, I'm going to take the over.
I think just because this is a very strong division, I do want to see them hit the over. But ultimately, if I had to put money on this, I would take the under.
I'm going to be with BK here. I'm taking the over. I like this team a lot. They're young, they're strong, and I think something important to look at, like BK alluded at, is they still have 63 million in space they can spend.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think they're going to look to add, and I think they'll succeed in that. I think they're going to make a big push in this playoff race.
The Anaheim Angels have fallen on some hard times as of late. Currently, they're sitting $33 million over the salary cap. Is this roster even worth saving?
Okay, first of all, the fact that they're 33 over the salary cap, like, you can't even ask, is this roster even worth saving? The question you have to be asking is, can this roster be saved? To which I think the answer, probably no. Like, what do you do to even, you need to cut some guys or trade some
What I would do, I would call up the Red Sox and tell them to make 12 to 13 trades to get me that 33 million so that they could turn around and then trade that for 32 million and call it a win.
That never fails.
Yeah. All things considered, even though they're in crazy financial woes, this team is solid still. I mean, another one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. I think they have the best bullpen. It could serve them, trading Rosenthal even. I don't know, he probably has an NTC and everything, but that would clear them up. They still have a strong rotation elsewhere. I don't really see an easy way other than that to get them under cap. But if they can find a way, this team is very good. I like this a lot.
Now, the over-under set at 74. I have to think that a lot of that has to do with their current cap situation. And because of that current cap situation, I'm going to take the under. I think they're going to have to strip everything down entirely. If they don't, then they're just going to lose all of their picks and be an average to maybe above average team. So
yeah,
that's what we're looking at.
I'm going to take the over for this reason and this reason only. I think that we're going to get like maybe 50, 60 games into the season. They'll look at themselves and they'll be a playoff team. And then they think, like, what messages is it going to send to the fans if we have to trade away some fan favorites who are playing well or cut some guys just for cap reasons? And ultimately, they're going to stay the course. They're going to take the punishment. They're going to suffer the loss of picks, which will hurt them in the future. But I think that tearing down a playoff-bound roster is just too much of negative PR at the moment, and they won't do that. So I'm going to take the over.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the over. And I think that if I was the leader of Anaheim, I would take a look at what the Red Sox have done trading for cap. No, trading for cap recently, that is. In that there's still quite a few teams that have the cap that can help out the Angels, even disregarding the Astros without ownership and stuff like that. You have teams with, like, as we said, Vespers, but they probably want to use theirs. This Angels team is one of the few teams that has a very, very strong lineup and rotation and also has some good prospects they could utilize if they really want to make that push this year.
Giants could be a good trade fit.
Exactly, as well. Yeah, I think they're going to be okay. I think they're more likely to trade their prospects and picks for cap than they are to trade their players away that are under salary. So I'm going to take the over on them.
Now we're looking at the Mariners. The Mariners were a very confusing team. They were considered potentially to be the favorite in the AL last year, after a premature hitting of the panic button and selling everyone after a slow start. Can we expect a full rebuild to commence at any time soon? Is this a team who's going to try to make a push for relevancy again? What can we expect from this Seattle team in 2041?
I think they're going to try to push for relevancy after 5 straight divisions, including a World Series in 2037. It's just hard to tear it down after the first sign of trouble. But um, as we all know, Texas kind of has taken the lead as the number one team in this division, even though and Seattle did finish last year. They do have the talent still. I expect them to attempt to make one last push. I don't know if it's good enough. Van Dale is now 31, under contract for 4 more years. It's still a good contract, but it's just tough to see this team hanging with the Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, look at the composition of this team is perplexing because they have a lot of very top heavy team, a lot of really young, good talent, but then it just kind of falls off the map. You look at Gennaro Ross in the DH spot and Michael Collins at third, not horrible, but compared to the rest of this lineup and this top of this rotation, it just feels like the team's incomplete. I would like to see them stay with it and try to acquire some of that bottom of the lineup, upgrade the bottom of the lineup a little bit. But as they stand, I don't think they're going to do much damage in that AL West that is very, very strong.
Now their over-under is set at 80.5. I'm going to go ahead and take the under, but like I said, I don't know what to expect from this team. I do think that no matter what they do, we're going to question it. So I think it's safe to take the under.
I think it's fair to say that whatever they do, we're going to question it. If they tear it down, it's like this was a playoff team 2 years ago and 5 straight divisions. If they stay the course, what do you do with this team? Was last place in the AL West last year. So they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. And ultimately, I think that I'm going to take the under.
I'm going to agree with you, too. I'm taking the under as well. Similar to the Angels, this team does still have some good prospects. They want to upgrade this team. They have some cap. They could make moves, but I don't think they will. And I don't think they should, per se. But this team, as it stands, is very top-heavy. It has some good talent that's going to be fun to watch this year.
All right, now that pretty much concludes everything. While I've got you here, Metrock, I want to hear your craziest, boldest predictions for this season, and if you could throw a little World Series pick in there for us too, that would be great.
A World Series pick. I hate to say it, but I do think the Orioles will come out on top. It's kind of hard to see anyone else giving too much of a fight against them on that. MVP, again, it hurts to say, but I do think Ellison's going to come away with another one. I think this one's probably the weirdest one. I'm just loving the Orioles right now. Yes, I like Lovell a lot. I hadn't really noticed who he was until I was looking through these teams preparing for this over-under, and that guy, I'm a big slugging guy, and he has very high slugging. I think he's going to be an all-star this year. That's probably my weirdest prediction.
I mean, I like the sound of that. I would very much like to see that happen.
But yeah, and I will give one of myself too. I think the Red Sox are going to push for 500 this year.
Now that might be the boldest one yet.
I'll say there's in the works. There's stuff in the works.
Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Metrock, it's been great having you on. Look forward to having you on again if you will allow us to.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me.
Like I said, this is an insanely low quality, low budget podcast, so we don't have any like clapping, noises or any like play out music or anything. So I just like to talk at the end. I think that really leaves people satisfied hearing my voice as the pod rings out. Tennis, did you have anything you wanted to add to this one?
Not for the AL. I think we covered it all, and I look forward to hearing our thoughts on the NL.
Perfect. Well, we will get started on our NL research. I think that one will just be a me and tennis show. Not quite as entertaining, but I do hope you guys will give it a listen. As always, if you guys have ideas for little segments, if you want to come on, shoot me a message. I'd love to hear from all of you. Until next time.